We will now be discussing the many reasons why Hubal is the Allah of the Muslims and why Allah is not the Jewish God Yahweh, who is also the Christian God Yahweh, and Christ being the angel of Yahweh, the one who spoke to Abraham saying, "Abraham, don't kill the son, don't kill Isaac. I have sworn by myself I will bless you." The angel of the Lord who spoke to Moses out of the burning bush, the angel of the Lord in Judges 13. Like, if you go through the Bible Gateway, and you type angel of the Lord, angel of God, Lord of hosts, Messiah, it's all the same person. It's Christ, the Son of God. And the angel of the Lord has the authority of God. He is worshipped as God. He is not as, he is, Christ has always said, "My Father is greater than I." Well, we can see that all the way back in Genesis. So, in Arabian mythology, Hubal, which means spirit of Baal, was a god worshipped in pre-Islamic Arabia, notably by the Quraysh in the Kaaba of Mecca. Quraysh is the tribe from which Muhammad comes from. The god's idol was a human figure believed to control acts of divination, which was performed by tossing arrows before the statue. Remember that tossing arrows before the statue of Hubal is how you would do divination, because Muhammad's grandfather did this very same thing for Allah. The direction in which the arrows pointed answered questions asked of the idol. The specific powers and identity attributed to Hubal are unclear, because there was a huge cover-up in the days of Islam. They destroyed everything that had anything to do with this religion to cover it up. But it's the same religion as Islam. They're just hiding it. So he's a god of divination, rain, and war, very similar to Baal. Access to the idol was controlled by the Quraysh tribe. Hubal's devotees fought against the followers of the Islamic prophet Muhammad, who was also of the Quraysh tribe, during the Battle of Badr in 624. After Muhammad entered Mecca in 630, he destroyed the statue of Hubal from the Kaaba along with the idols of the other polytheistic gods. Apparently there were paintings on the Kaaba of Abraham, Mary, and Jesus, and apparently Muhammad left these alone. So we already see this pagan Gnostic version of the Bible in this land, along with all this other stuff. So it seems like this Hubal, it seems like this is an Amalekite religion brought from Syria. It used to say that on Wikipedia, but there's been such a huge, expansive cover-up, it's hard to find these things. Hubal most prominently appeared at Mecca, where an image of him was worshipped at the Kaaba. According to Karen Armstrong, the sanctuary was dedicated to Hubal, who was worshipped as the greatest of the 360 idols the Kaaba contained, which probably represented the days of the year. Hashim ibn al-Kalbi's Book of Idols describes the image as shaped like a human with the right hand broken off and replaced with a golden hand, and it had a vault for a sacrifice, and that the offering consisted of 100 camels. Now, Muhammad's grandfather sacrificed 100 camels to Allah, and Muhammad also sacrificed a camel as well, which is an unclean animal according to the Torah. You can ride a camel, but you're not supposed to eat it, and you're definitely not supposed to sacrifice it. Both authors speak of 7 arrows placed before the image, which were cast for divination in cases of death, virginity, and marriage. According to Ibn al-Kalbi, the image was first set up by Khuzaimai ibn Mudrika ibn Alyas. It doesn't matter. Another tradition recorded by Ibn Ishaq holds that Amir, the leader of the Khuza tribe, put an image of Hubal into the Kaaba, where it was worshipped as one of the chief deities of the tribe. The date for Amir is disputed, which dates as late as the end of the 4th century AD suggested, but what is quite sure is that the Quraysh later became the protectors of the ancient holy place, supplanting the Khuza. A tale recorded by Ibn al-Kalbi has Muhammad's grandfather Abdul Muttalib vowing to sacrifice one of his 10 children. He consulted the arrows of Hubal to find out which child he should choose. The arrows pointed to his son Abdullah, Abd Allah, which means slave of Allah. So we see already, Allah and Hubal are the same God. Abdullah means slave of Allah. This pagan is going to sacrifice his son to Hubal. But in another version of the story, he's going to sacrifice him to Allah. However, he was saved when 100 camels were sacrificed in his place. According to Tabari, Abdul Muttalib later also brought the infant Muhammad himself before the image. So Muhammad's grandfather brought baby Muhammad to see Hubal. So, origins of Hubal, there may be some foundation of truth in the story that Amr traveled to Syria and had brought back from there the cults of the goddesses Uzzah and Manat. Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, and Manat, the 3 goddesses that Muhammad invoked in the satanic verses, which were removed from the Quran the next day. So he combined this with that of Hubal, the idol of the Kuza. According to al-Azraqi, the image was brought to Mecca from the land of Hit in Mesopotamia, who relates that the name Hubal is an Aramaic word for spirit, suggests that the worship of Hubal was imported to Mecca from north of Arabia, possibly from Moab or Mesopotamia. Hubal may have been the combination of Hu, meaning spirit or god, and the Moabite god Baal, meaning master or lord. So this is a Canaanite religion. These are the enemies of the Hebrews. Ever since the days of Moses, they've been enemies of the Hebrews. So we see it in the Nabatean inscriptions, mythological role. Suggested that Hubal was regarded as the son of Alat and the brother of Wad. Hubal was a lunar deity. We see that with the crescent moons. Religion of the Nabateans accepts the Nabatean origins of the god, but says there is little evidence of Hubal's mythological role, that it is possible he was closely linked. All right, let's see what else we find. So Osama bin Laden called America the modern Hubal, but Islam is the modern Hubal. They just pretend, oh no, these religion, they say that Abraham built the Kaaba. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. So this man, Robert Morey, 1994 book Moon God and the Archaeology of the Middle East, claims that Allah was that of Hubal, a moon god. So that's very interesting. Pat Robertson, the struggle is whether Hubal, the moon god of Mecca known as Allah, is supreme, or whether the Judeo-Christian Yahweh God of the Bible is supreme. These views about Hubal as Allah have been called propaganda by Muslims. Of course they would. They're not going to admit their origins. I mean, if they really believe that Abraham made the Kaaba, find me some evidence outside of the Quran, outside of the Hadiths, outside of Muhammad. Find me some evidence. So here's Abd al-Muttalib. This is Muhammad's grandfather, the fourth chief of the Quraysh tribe, which is the one that worshipped Hubal, grandfather of Islamic prophet Muhammad. And let's get to the part where he's about to sacrifice his son, because that's very interesting. I mean, I understand in Genesis, God told Abraham to do it, but that's very different. And according to the book of Jubilees, it was actually Satan who brought up the idea to test Abraham. So, discovery of Zamzam well. So he digs a well near two deities, Esaf and Na'ili, and there's the Zamzam well. And he says, Abdul Muttalib found traces of an ancient religious well and exclaimed, Allahu Akbar. But wait, he worships Hubal. Why is he saying Allahu Akbar? Some of the Quraysh disputed his claim to sole rights over water. Then one of them suggested they go to a female shaman, a witch, who lived afar. It is said that she could summon jinns, who are demons, and that she could help them decide who is the owner of the well. So 11 people from the 11 tribes went out, and what ends up happening is she tells him that you can sacrifice one of your sons instead. So let's get to that part. So Al-Harith was Abdul Muttalib's only son at the time he dug the Zamzam well. When the Quraysh tried to help him in the digging, he vowed that if he were to have 10 sons to protect him, he would sacrifice one of them to Allah at the Kaaba. But wait, the other version said he was going to sacrifice him to Hubal. And here he says Allahu Akbar. So which one is it? Is Allah Hubal? Because it certainly seems like it. Seems like there's been a very big cover-up of the origins of Islam, which ties in with basically Canaanite religions who are hostile to Israel ever since the days of Moses. When they were wandering the desert, these people were already enemies of the Jews. So he sacrificed one of his sons to Allah at the Kaaba. Later, after 9 more sons had been born to him, he told them he must keep the vow. The divination arrows, which is a Hubal thing, the divination arrows fell upon his favorite son Abdullah, which means slave of Allah. The Quraysh protested Abdul Muttalib's intention to sacrifice his son and demanded he sacrifice something else instead. He agreed to consult a sorceress, a witch with a familiar spirit. She told him to cast lots between Abdullah and 10 camels. So he ends up sacrificing 100 camels, just like Hubal. Now, this is not a clean animal for Jewish burnt sacrifices, but he did it anyways, because Islam is Hubal worship, pretending to be Judaism. Here's his wives and his kids, and I think that's it for the story. He ends up taking care of Muhammad. When Muhammad's father, Abdullah, slave of Allah, dies, his father, Muhammad's grandfather, ends up taking care of Muhammad, apparently takes him to see the statue of Hubal, probably puts a demon on him from a young age, and that should be the end of him. So the religion in pre-Islamic Arabia was basically a bunch of stuff, but especially Hubal worship and paganism. The Kaaba, the three gods. So worship was directed to various gods and goddesses, including Hubal and the goddesses Alat, Aluza, and Manat. So these are the three daughters of Allah. The satanic verses, we'll talk about that shortly. Different theories have been proposed regarding the role of Allah in Meccan religion. Many of the physical descriptions of the pre-Islamic gods are traced to idols, especially near the Kaaba, which is said to have contained up to 360 of them. So there are many religious minorities like Jews and Christians, Arabian paganism, Book of Idols. Let's see. Descendants of the sons of Abraham who had settled in Mecca migrated to other lands, carried holy stones from the Kaaba with them, erected them, and circumambulated them like the Kaaba. This, according to Al-Kalbi, led to the rise of idol worship. So it's the same religion, they just changed little pieces of it. It's like Catholicism. Catholicism is like paganism pretending to be Christianity. It's the exact same thing with Islam. Let's see what else. Worship, the deities, polytheistic, Bedouins, veneration of the dead, minor spirits, ancestor spirit worship, malevolent beings, ghouls, Allah. Some scholars postulate that in pre-Islamic Arabia, including Mecca, Allah was considered to be a deity. Well, considering Muhammad's grandfather said Allahu Akbar when he discovered a well, and he did basically Hubal worship, yeah, it's the same God. Hubal and Allah are the exact same creature. Allah was considered to be a deity, possibly a creator deity or supreme deity in polytheistic pantheon. The word Allah may have been used as a title rather than a name. The concept of Allah may have been vague in the Meccan religion. According to Islamic sources, Meccan and their neighbors believed that the goddesses Alat, Aluza, and Manat were the daughters of Allah. Regional variants of the word Allah occur in both pagan and Christian pre-Islamic inscriptions. Muhammad's father's name was Abd Allah, meaning the servant of Allah, the slave of Allah. Well, Abdullah was about to be sacrificed by his Hubal worshipping father. I think that'll be good for this section. Alat, Aluz, and Manat, common names for multiple goddesses across Arabia. Probably like Venus, Aphrodite, practices, cults, images. So we can see this is a pagan religion pretending to be Judaism, pretending to be Christianity. But all it is it's blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, the unforgivable sin. They are at war with the people of the Bible. Don't you ever forget that. So the satanic verses, the Islamic prophet Muhammad is alleged to have mistaken for divine revelation. These are praise for the three pagan Meccan goddesses, Alat, Aluz, and Manat, the three daughters of Allah. So he says this before the Arabs, before the Meccans, and then the next day he takes it down. But it was recorded in the history books of the time. It's just been wiped out by the modern Muslim historians. No, this never happened, don't worry about it. But no, he said it. It's in Quranic commentaries and biographies of the Prophet, such as Ibn Ishaq's. In the essential form, the story reports that Muhammad longed to convert his kinsmen and neighbors of Mecca to Islam. As he was reciting these verses of Surat an-Najm, considered a revelation from the angel Gabriel, have you thought of Alat and Al-Uzza and about the third one, Manat? Satan tempted him to utter the following line, these are the exalted Garanik, whose intercession is hoped for. These were three Islamic Arabian goddesses worshipped by the Meccans, and apparently they were the daughters of Allah. But the extra words, these are the ones who are hoped for intercession. Apparently this was removed from the Quran. But, it's like, what's going on with this religion, man? This is not what Moses taught at all. This is not what Abraham taught at all. Who is their God? Is their God Yahweh? If so, why don't they do what Yahweh teaches? Why do they say the whole Bible's corrupted? What is their agenda, if not conquest and destruction of that which God established? So, let's get to the next part. So, this is the black stone. I believe it was in Exodus 29 or Leviticus 29, where it explicitly says you're not supposed to worship like rock statues, standing pillars of rocks and stuff. But here they pray facing the Kaaba, facing Mecca. They try to kiss this rock for forgiveness of their sins. It's a rock set into the eastern corner of the Kaaba, the ancient building in the center of the Grand Mosque in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. It is revered by Muslims as an Islamic relic, which according to Muslim tradition dates back to the time of Adam and Eve. It's not in the Bible, it's not in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's not in anything except Islamic theology and pre-Islamic pagan theology. The stone was venerated at the Kaaba in pre-Islamic pagan times. According to Islamic tradition, it was set intact into the Kaaba's wall by the Islamic prophet Muhammad in 605 AD, 5 years before his first revelation. Since then, it has been broken into fragments and is now cemented into a silver frame. So they would always do this, even before Islam. They would make pilgrimage, they would kiss it, they would walk around it, and all Muhammad did was say, oh, well, when Hagar was looking for water and she ran back and forth 7 times, he tried to relate that to the Kaaba story. But this is paganism. This is not what the Bible teaches. So how is their God the same as the Jewish God? That's the thing. They're appropriating Jewish prophets and corrupting their message to take away the black stone was held in reverence well before Islam. It has long been associated with the Kaaba, which was built in pre-Islamic period and was a site of pilgrimage of Nabateans who visited the shrine once a year to perform their pilgrimage. The Kaaba held 360 idols of the Meccan gods. The Semitic cultures of the Middle East had a tradition of using unusual stones to mark places of worship. While bowing, worshiping, and praying to such sacred objects is also described in the Tanakh, the Torah, as idolatrous and was the subject of prophetic rebuke. That's right. The Hebrews rejected Muhammad for this. They saw him as a heretic. The meteorite origin theory of the black stone has seen it likened by some writers to the meteorite which was placed and worshipped in the Greek temple of Artemis. The Kaaba has been associated with fertility rites of Arabia. Some writers remark on the apparent similarity of the black stone and its frame to the external female genitalia. So let's see if there's anything else. Muhammad. So I think that's about it. This goes against the Torah, so they can't claim that they believe in Moses if they're going to not do what Moses taught. The Muslims don't believe in the Torah. They don't believe in the Gospels. They don't believe in anything in the Bible. What they do believe is that this thing is special, and if you kiss it, you can basically get your sins removed. That the Kaaba, the black stone, will take away your sins. That is amazingly idolatrous. So these people do not belong in our countries. These are like voodoo shaman people pretending to be Jews, pretending to be Christian. Oh, we believe in Jesus too. We just don't believe he was crucified. We don't believe he's God. We don't believe he forgives sins. And we believe he's a Muslim. And we're going to kill you if you say otherwise because you're a heretic. That's their religion. That's insane. So yes, Islam, absolutely the Antichrist religion. Absolutely. So let's get to the history of the Quran, because it is a very interesting, it's not a miracle, it's just crazy that this thing is taken seriously. Islamic tradition relates that Muhammad received his first revelation at 610 AD in the cave of Hira during one of his isolated retreats to the mountains. Thereafter, he received revelations over a period of 23 years. According to Hadith and Muslim history, after Muhammad immigrated to Medina and formed an independent Muslim community, he ordered many of his companions to recite the Quran and to learn and teach the laws which were revealed daily. The laws? You mean the Torah? That's the law we're supposed to keep, the Torah. So the Islamic laws seem unnecessary if we're going to believe that Moses is a prophet. It is related that some of the Quraysh who were taken prisoners at the Battle of Badr regained their freedom after they had taught some of the Muslims the simple writing at the time. So they couldn't even write. An illiterate band of desert warlords couldn't write, so they had to learn from their hostages. Thus, a group of Muslims gradually became illiterate. As it was initially spoken, the Quran was recorded on tablets, bones, and the wide flat ends of date palm fronds. Many surahs were in use amongst early Muslims since they were mentioned in numerous sayings by both Sunni and Shia sources, relating Muhammad's use of the Quran as a call to Islam, the making of prayer, and the manner of recitation. However, the Quran did not exist in book form at the time of Muhammad's death in 632. There is an agreement among scholars that Muhammad himself did not write down the revelation. So sometimes it is revealed, so Muhammad's revelations were sometimes revealed like the ringing of a bell. And Aisha reported, I saw the Prophet being inspired divinely on a very cold day and noticed the sweat dropping from his forehead as the inspiration was over. Muhammad's first revelation, according to the Quran, was accompanied with a vision. The agent of revelation is mentioned as the one mighty in power, the one who grew clear to view when he was in the uppermost horizon. Graphic descriptions of Muhammad's condition at these moments may be regarded as genuine because he was severely disturbed after these revelations. These seizures would have been seen by those around him as convincing evidence for the superhuman origin of Muhammad's inspirations. It's witchcraft. This is not what any of the prophets went through when they talked to God. Not even close. However, Muhammad's critics accused him of being a possessed man, a soothsayer, or a magician, since his experiences were similar to those claimed by such figures well known in ancient Arabia. Welch additionally states that it remains uncertain whether these experiences occurred before or after Muhammad's initial claims of prophethood. So he was illiterate, he can't read, he can't write. But they took this as a sign that he was an actual prophet. So basically, yeah, they just wrote this stuff on leaves and whatever they. I mean, this was not well documented text. Right? The Hebrew Bible, they kept very good records, and the genealogies, they were very organized, and that's how Judaism kept coming back over and over again. Also with divine intervention to make sure it did. But Islam, it was like parts of the leaves were like rubbed off, and they rewrote over it. Like they made it up as they went along with it. This is not well preserved. Difficulties in collecting the Quranic material from parchments, palm leaf stalks, thin stones, any written work containing divine teachings, and for men who knew it by heart and recorded in earlier narratives. They were just winging it. Noticing slight differences in pronunciation of the Quran as Islam expanded beyond the Arabian Peninsula into Persia, the Levant, and North Africa. He ordered a committee headed by Zayd to use Abu Bakr's copy and prepare a standard text of the Quran. So it was already starting to deviate right there by like 650 AD. Thus, within 20 years of Muhammad's death, the complete Quran was committed to written form, a codex. So this is just wild. This is not well preserved. Like, you can read about the history of this book. It's not. The present form of the Quran text is accepted by Muslim scholars to be the original version compiled by Abu Bakr. This preservation of the Quran is considered one of the miracles of the Quran. It's a miracle that this religion is taken seriously. So let's get to something more interesting. So we're going to study the name Allah, which seems to be the same as Hubal, history of usage. Regional variants of the word Allah occur in both pagan and Christian pre-Islamic inscriptions. Arab pagans considered Allah as an unseen God who created and controlled the universe. Pagans believed worship of humans or animals who had lucky events in their life brought them closer to Allah. Pre-Islamic Meccans worshipped Allah alongside a host of lesser gods and those whom they called the daughters of Allah. But Islam forbade worship of anyone or anything other than Allah. Some authors have suggested that polytheistic Arabs used the name as a reference to a creator god or supreme god. So Allah was the supreme deity of the tribal federation around the Quraysh, from which Muhammad is descended. And he was a designation that was consecrated, that consecrated the superiority of Hubal, the supreme deity of Quraysh, over the other gods. So there you go, Hubal and Allah, for many reasons, not just this. For Muhammad's grandfather, for the Kaaba, many, many reasons. We can see that there was a cover-up of the pagan origins of Islam. Some inscriptions seem to indicate the use of Allah as a name of a polytheistic deity centuries earlier than Muhammad, but nothing precise is known about this use. Some scholars have suggested that Allah may have represented a remote creator god who was gradually eclipsed by more particularized local deities. There is a disagreement on whether Allah played a major role in the Meccan religious cult. No iconic representations of Allah is known to have existed. Allah is the only god in Mecca that did not have an idol. Muhammad's father's name was Abdallah, meaning the slave of Allah, and he was about to get sacrificed. But instead, his father sacrificed camels after talking to a witch. Does that sound like Judaism? So, once Muhammad's heresies were becoming more understood by the Jewish communities of Arabia, because Muhammad borrowed a lot of credibility by claiming to be a Jewish prophet in the lineage of Abraham, Moses, Jesus. So the Banu Qurayza, there were two other tribes that were expelled by Muhammad, but this is when he got more violent. These ones were executed, and their women and children were taken as slaves and sold. They were a Jewish tribe which lived in northern Arabia, and Muhammad basically received a revelation from his schizophrenic demon to kill them, or to enslave them. Muhammad often raided Quraysh trade caravans and plundered their goods, leading to armed conflict between the two. Muhammad also tried to convince the Jewish population of Medina that he was their prophet, but failed and was criticized in part for the inconsistency of his Quran with the Jewish scriptures. They recognized that his Quran is contradictory to the Torah. This led to the transfer of the direction of the Islamic prayer from Jerusalem, which is where the Bible teaches you're supposed to pray, which is where Christ is going to reign from, to the Kaaba in Mecca. So as soon as they realized he wasn't a real prophet, they transferred the prayers to Jerusalem over to the Kaaba in Mecca. And then he expelled the Banu Kainuka and Banu Nadir from Medina. Then he was reportedly visited by Jibril, not Gabriel, because this Jibril told Muhammad that Jesus did not die on the cross. But in Daniel chapter 9, we know for a fact that Gabriel told Daniel that the Messiah would be executed. So Jibril tells him to attack the Qurayza. Despite the tribe's earlier assistance in excavating the trench to impede the Meccans' advance and providing the Muslims with their tools, Muhammad accused them of having sided with his enemy, a claim that they strongly refuted. At a later stage of Muhammad's siege against them, the Qurayza initially proposed surrendering and vacating their land, and requested to carry 1 camel load of possessions per person. So this is what happened with the other 2 tribes. They were allowed to flee, but these ones, Muhammad made an example of them. He says, surrender unconditionally, and he says all the men should be put to death, their possessions to be distributed among the Muslims, and their women and children to be taken as captives. Muhammad declared, you have judged according to the very sentence of God above the 7 heavens. Consequently, 600 to 900 men of Banu Qurayza were executed. The women and children were distributed as slaves, some being transported to Najd to be sold, and the proceeds were then utilized to purchase weapons and horses for the Muslims. This is not a prophet of Yahweh. If this is what Allah is, we should not be allowing any of these people into our country. So, ethnically Jewish or Arab converts to Judaism, but they realized he wasn't a real prophet. They stopped believing in him. He became hostile. He had them executed. He had their women and children sold into slavery, and that's all she wrote. This is the Canaanite religion. These are the Amalekites. These are the Edomites. These are the hostile groups that always were against the people of Israel ever since the days of Moses, before they even had a country. This is one of the many enemies. I believe this is the Antichrist religion, and the only way to fight back is the Torah and the Gospels. We need a biblical theocracy that enshrines the Torah. Okay, the Gospels, we can do that on an individual level, but the Torah has to be the foundation of everything. And if they say, oh, we believe in the prophets, great. So you're going to convert to following the Torah now. No Sharia law. We're going to follow the Torah. Oh, we think the Torah is corrupted. Well, then you can go back to Arabia where you belong. So I believe Muhammad was killed by a Jewish woman who poisoned him. It's not quite clear. Let's go to his death. So he, let me just scroll. I don't want to get distracted. He ate satanic verses reported en masse and documented by nearly all the major biographers of Muhammad in Islam's first 2 centuries. Oh, but it didn't happen because the Muslims say otherwise. Let's see. Let's see where it gets to his death. Beginning of armed conflict. Massacre of Banu Qurayza. The Muslims killed these Jews because they realized he was a false prophet. Okay, Khaybar. So he conquers this place. Muhammad cried out, Allahu Akbar, Khaybar is destroyed. And then one of these Jewish women gave him a poisoned lamb. Okay. At the feast following the battle, the meal served to Muhammad was reportedly poisoned. His companion Bashir fell dead after consuming it, while Muhammad himself managed to vomit it out after tasting it. The perpetrator was Zainab bint al-Harith, a Jewish woman whose father, uncle, and husband were killed by the Muslims. When asked why she did it, she replied, you know what you've done to my people. I said to myself, if he is truly a prophet, he will know about the poison. If he is merely a king, I'll be rid of him. One account suggests Muhammad forgave her, but in other more accepted reports, she was killed thereafter. Muhammad suffered illness for a period due to the poison he ingested and endured sporadic pain from it until his death. So it seems like the poison got to him in the end. Final years, like his legs went limp. Like he was weak. Like he really lost his strength from that poison. This Jewish woman poisoned Muhammad. Death and tomb. After praying at the burial site, he suffered a dreadful headache that made him cry in pain. He continued to spend the night with each of his wives one by one. He fainted in Maimuna's hut. His legs were trembling. He explained that he had pleurisy. Goes on to say, where was it? I'm pretty sure there was something where he says to Aisha that he thinks that he was poisoned. He thinks that he remembers the pain from when he ate the food that the Jewish woman gave him at Khaybar. I guess I can't find it. I know I read it here somewhere. Give me a second. So it seems like the poison got to him. Muhammad said he felt that his aorta was being severed because of the food he ate at Khaybar. On 8th of June, 632, Muhammad died. In his last moments, he reportedly uttered, "O God, forgive me and have mercy on me and let me join the highest companions." Well, God would have forgiven him if he would have repented and accepted Jesus Christ on his deathbed. And I hope he did. But I don't know. You know, it's like some people, it's like on their deathbed, they're not willing to repent. They think they're going to somehow find a way around it. They think hell's going to be cool or something. I don't know. So that's all she wrote. Jewish woman fed him poison after he killed her family. Seems like that's what got him. So this is the Jewish woman, Zainab bint al-Harith. She attempted to assassinate Muhammad in the aftermath of the Battle of Khaybar. Apparently they were Yemenite origins, and she penetrated the fortress. So the leaders went to Muhammad to negotiate the terms of surrender. Soldiers ran into the castle to collect weapons. So she finds out that Muhammad's favorite food was lamb shoulder, and she poisoned the whole lamb. She brought it in and placed it before him. She took hold of the shoulder and chewed a morsel. He took hold of the shoulder and chewed a morsel of it, but he did not swallow. Okay, but the other one says that he vomited. So which is it? Bashir B. al-Bara. These names are so weird. This guy who was with him took some of it as the apostle had done, but he swallowed it, and the apostle spat it out, saying, "This bone tells me it is poisoned." So, superstition. The bone's not going to tell you it's been poisoned. So, messenger of God says, "Did you poison the shoulder?" She said, "Who told you?" He replied, "The shoulder." She said, "Yes." He asked, "What persuaded you to do that?" She said, "You killed my father, my uncle, my husband. You took from my people what you took." I said to myself, if he's a prophet, he will be informed. The sheep will inform him of what I did. If he is a king, we will be relieved of him. But looks like it worked. After swallowing the poisoned mutton, this guy remained paralyzed for the rest of his life. When he died nearly a year later, Zainab was handed to his relatives, and they executed blood vengeance. So Muhammad apparently cupped himself to relieve the poison, but I don't think it worked. I think this is it. I think this is what killed him. Mentioned that hadiths attributed to Aisha mentioned that Muhammad on his deathbed remembered the excruciating pain when he was fed poison in Khaybar. The Prophet in his ailment in which he died used to say, "Oh, Aisha, I still feel the pain caused by the food I ate at Khaybar, and at this time I feel as if my aorta is being cut from that poison." Very interesting. So one last thing I'd like to say is that in Daniel chapter 9, Gabriel in verse 21 speaks to Daniel and tells him in verse 26, "After 62 weeks, Messiah shall be executed, cut off, but not for himself." So if Gabriel told Daniel that the Messiah was going to be killed, who told Muhammad otherwise? This religion is not what it presents itself as. I don't know what percentage of the Muslims know that they're following pagan mystery religions of Arabia, but essentially when you study Sufism, you see that there is a lot of witchcraft hiding behind Islam. We should not be tolerating this. Islam, witchcraft, paganism, it's all the same thing. It's a danger to society. We must establish a biblical theocracy, or over time, Sharia law will take over the earth. It took over Afghanistan, which used to be Buddhist, took over Pakistan, which used to be Hindu, it's taken over London, it's taken over Dearborn, Michigan. It's a serious problem. They will never stop. We need a biblical theocracy. We need the Torah and the Gospels enshrined in the Constitution as the law of the land. And then God will protect us and fight for us on our behalf against the enemy. Shalom, my brothers and sisters in Christ. I hope you found this informative.